So, like I mentioned before, the Explorer panel is where you'll be managing all your files inside Substance Designer. This is where you'll be creating new files, you save files, and then you open pre-existing projects that you may have. One thing to know is kind of the file structure that Substance likes to use. It uses this thing called packages. And what it is essentially a zip file that holds all the information you've ever brought into Substance Designer for your current project that you're creating. It's kind of similar in the way Unreal has their packages, where everything you import, you just have this one single file. So inside of a package, you can actually have your graphs, you can actually have all your bitmaps you've imported, and different things like that. Um, the quickest way to create a new package is just go to File, New Substance. And here you'll be brought up with a window to choose a template. What a template is a kind of like pre-existing outputs for your graphs. So if you see under graph outputs, you'll notice that you have base color, normal, roughness, metallic, AO, and height. And depending on which graph that you use, it gives you different outputs. So if you were to use the metallic roughness, you can see that'll give you the metallic and roughness outputs. You do specular, it does specular and glossiness. Or if you just want to create an empty graph with absolutely nothing in it, you can also are free to do that as well. You can give the graph name, and then the size mode. You can either choose relative to parent or absolute. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the next video. And then just choosing the kind of dimensions you want for your graph. So if you just hit OK. So right off the bat, you'll notice that it created all the outputs from that template view that we just closed. And inside the graph here on the left side, you'll notice it also has all of these. So to close a package, you can just right click and close. And then do you want to save? It asks you if you want to save it. So you can say yes or no. So let's just create a new substance. You could do an empty one, same thing, but you'll notice that because there are no outputs inside the graph view, you don't have kind of the plus drop down where you can see all your outputs. So let's just close this one and bring back one that actually does have some outputs. So I'll just do metallic roughness. Okay, cool. So other things that you could bring into packages are things like bitmaps, vector graphics, 3D meshes, fonts, anything that you see in the import or link dropdowns. Now, the important thing to know about import and linking are the way they work. So import makes a copy of whatever file that you have on your hard drive at the time of import. So any changes that you make, you essentially have to re-import that map over and over again. Whereas if you were to link something, it'll constantly look at the path that the file is originally saved on your hard drive, and it'll update just based on that. To give you guys a small little like demo on how this works. So if I do import bitmap, I can actually go and find a bitmap in here. So let's do image import. Cool. So you'll notice that the image import is in here now, right? And this is kind of a copy of it. So if I were to do any changes to that, it wouldn't update. So if I were to, let's say, do the exact same thing, but let's do a link a bitmap, and let's do image link. So again, it's imported in here, right? So I actually have that file open in Photoshop. Let's just do a crazy change. Save as. I'm going to update the image that I have linked. So yes. And you'll notice the little thumbnail updated instantly. That's because I changed the file. So if I went back here and I saved over the image import, you'll notice that it didn't actually update because this is the image we imported. So if I wanted to get that new image, I would have to actually go into the package, import bitmap, and import the new one. And now it actually is different from the original because it is a duplicate. So not only can you import like just different images that you could bring inside of your graph view, You can actually also import, sorry, you can actually link 3D meshes. So let's just bring in a 3D mesh real quick. Mesh test. Nope. Cool. So with the mesh, you can actually bake things inside Substance Designer, but it also gives you a list of all the different materials that are applied to that mesh when you first imported it. So if you wanted to actually bake something, you could right click and bake model information, and you'll get with this window. And this whole setup is a completely different topic that we'll cover later on in the video series. So we can just close that. And this is actually the only way to bring up this window is by importing a mesh, right clicking, and bake model information. So with different resources, you can actually just again have the same control. You can rename stuff, delete stuff, remove. And the cool thing about Substance is that it usually gives you a hotkey on what each of these things does. So you can actually just hit delete, hit yes, delete. So something to be mindful with your resources inside of your package are in the rare instance that something happens to the file. Say you've actually renamed it, you've moved it somewhere, or you've deleted it completely, and you need to pretty much plug it back in. So a quick example of this is say like we drag the resource in here, we're plugging away, we're making all this really cool art. Um, so say for example, this file changed. So let's just actually just go into the Explorer and show you where it is. Um, let's see. Let's say for example, we've actually renamed this file, and instantly Substance Designer says gives you a warning telling you that this image either has moved, it changed, and it needs to be relocated again. So one thing, the quickest way to do that is just right click on whatever resources is messed up. You right click, you hit relocate. You find the actual, let's just go back. Let me just copy this. You find the actual resource, and let's see. So it was originally named image link. So instantly, because I just named the image link, it instantly found it because it was in the same directory and stuff like that. So that's one way to fix a broken kind of resources in the weird occasion that something were to happen. Another cool kind of trick is if you right click on your unsaved package, or sorry, if you right click on your package and you go to dependency manager, it'll show you all the different resources that you have in your graph. And this is really helpful for if you're trying to find what kind of resources are broken inside of your graph. So you'll get kind of the same kind of exclamation point here on the list, but this is just kind of a bigger, almost like Excel sheet looking list of like all the resources you have and where they are inside of your graph. So to save an actual package and to be able to export and use it and kind of like, take it wherever you need to or open it somewhere, you can just actually right click and hit save or save as. So if we were to save this tutorial and just name it new graph tutorial. Cool. So now our package name changed to whatever we actually named the file. So from here, if you wanted to actually export, say this is really cool, you're finished with your material, and you want to actually export all the outputs. And by outputs, I mean kind of these outputs that we talked about a little bit in the beginning from the template that we chose. You can actually just right click inside of your graph and or sorry, the graph, not the package, but just the graph underneath the package, and just do export outputs as bitmaps. Here you'll be able to choose your destination, your format, and kind of the pattern that it'll use for the exporting process. So for example, this pattern essentially is saying like, we're going to use the graph name plus the identifier, which is these outputs are essentially identifiers. So that's one way to do it. Yes. pick your path, your format, and just hit export outputs, and it'll export them to wherever you chose. Another way of doing it is this is me personally how I do it. You just click up here above the graph view. There's this little wrench. You actually just click on it and then hit export outputs, and it'll bring up the exact same window that you had previously. So when we saved the actual package, you'll notice that it created an .sbs file, and .sbs files are pretty much primarily only used for Substance Designer. Say you made a really cool graph and you'd like to use it outside of Substance Designer, say like for Unreal or inside of Painter, you've made all these parameters inside of Substance Designer that you'd love to use and paint inside of Painter, you're actually going to have to publish your graph, which is completely different from the method I just showed you about exporting your outputs. So publishing your graph will actually create a file that can be read by Unreal, Unity, and Substance Painter. So to do that, you actually before with the outputs, you were actually right clicking on the graph. Well, to publish something, you actually have to publish the package. So to do that, you just right click on your package and do publish SBS AR file. So from here, you basically choose where you want to save it to. Let's just go back to our tutorial folder, name it, let's see, SBAR per. Let's just do test. Hit save, and here it's going to give you a few general options that you can choose. You can enable icons. Say if you set an icon for the whole graph as a whole that you want to see inside of Painter, that's where you see it inside the kind of library view. You can name your file, set the compression mode, and then set the output size. And the output size is determined inside the parameters of your actual graph. They'll be talking about that a little bit later. So you just hit OK. Now, if we go back into our Explorer window, we'll go back into that folder where we've been saving all our files. You'll notice that the SBS is here and the SBS AR. You can tell by the different color of the icons. Green is SBS AR and red is SBS. SBS can only be read by Substance Designer. SBS AR are files that you could bring into Unreal, Unity, or any third-party program that you'd like to use your substances in. So let's just close this window and go over one last thing. If you were to say you made some more changes to your graphs, you added a bunch of new nodes, you made some new connections, etc., you can and you want to actually re-export your SBS AR with all those new changes, you can actually just right click and do publish SBS AR as previous. So you won't get that kind of dialog box that you had to choose all those settings. It'll just keep the exact same settings that you had before. And that kind of pretty much covers all the different settings inside of the Explorer view and kind of all the different things you could do in here. Next up, we're going to talk about the graph view.